talking about your experience. How did you get here? What motivated you to be in this position right now?
Yeah, so I have always adored stories in all of their forms, whether through theater or song. And so for me, I started with a camera and just loved photography and telling photos in that way, would take portraits of people and adored that medium. So in college, it first looked like broadcast journalism, and then photography turned into videography, and I started filming everything. I would film my a cappella group, I would film little promos for student organizations, and eventually that became a love of film and documentary film. And so for me, my journey has always been one of building. I think every skill set I've learned, every topic that I've touched on has informed the next.
I have to ask this because I'm also a Black woman going into the industry. How do you separate yourself when you're covering hard-hitting stories that also hit close to home?
I think sometimes there's a narrative that who you are is a deficit when it's the opposite, especially in journalism, right? Who we are helps us understand many communities and tell different stories in really impactful ways. So I think if anything, for me, it's been important to just reframe it as, oh, who I am is an empowering thing, and it enables me to access many communities and my many identities as a first gen, as a daughter of immigrants, as a Black woman, as a woman who grew up in the East Coast. All of that informs everything I do. So I think for me, that has been a helpful framework. And it's important to remember, right, do we ask those questions of every person or just specific reporters? And that matters too, right?
You said that as journalists, it's not our place to give a voice to the voiceless. No one is voiceless. I wanted you to touch a little bit on that because I've heard from a lot of people that journalists are supposed to give a voice to the voiceless.
Right. As journalists, we are not a voice to the voiceless because everybody does have a voice, right? Our job is just to pass the mic in their direction. That said, there absolutely are communities and individuals and issues that are underrepresented or not discussed. And so I acknowledge and name that, but I try and use empowering language because I do think even a lot of those underrepresented or underreported people and issues in communities still are pretty outspoken, even if people aren't paying attention to them.
Do you have any particular story that really comes to light when you talk about stuff like that?
So a story I did recently at NBC is an investigative piece that it looks at St. Martinville, a juvenile facility in Louisiana, and it looks at alleged injustices that are happening towards those youth. That story is a great example of that discussion about voice to the voiceless, right? Because you could say that's a story that if us as journalists did not report on, many people would not know.
I really connected to what you said when you mentioned that it's not our job to give people a voice. They have a voice. It's our job to simply amplify it. I wanted to bring that up because we also just took a trip to Louisiana, a couple of students here at Montclair State, to cover issues on climate change and racial issues. We also visited a couple of families in Gordon Plaza, also a group of people who were actively trying to get people to understand their issues and understand their disparities, but people were not paying attention. You're here at the summit, you're seeing all of these people, all of these aspiring journalists, aspiring media industry professionals in the making, come together and really show interest and show passion for this field. Are you hopeful for the future? Are you excited to hopefully one day get to work with one of us?
I hope so. Look, I'm already working with you. You're doing a great job. Now, more than ever, there's so much growth. There's so many companies are open to new platforms and new ways of telling stories, and that's very exciting. Obviously, sometimes the stories are hard and difficult, and that can be heavy. But there is hope in knowing that we get to share the stories and hopefully add some good in the world. So,
thank you so much, Zinhle. I appreciate you coming here and talking to me.